Hey, Pat Rigsby here, and this is The Winning Coach. Today, we're going to talk about how to build a career around the life you actually want. Let's get to it. I've seen it time and time again, whether you're an entrepreneur or a high-performing coach, you build a business or a career, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing, and you try to fit in your life around it, and you tell yourself, you rationalize, you say, okay, I'm just doing this to get started. I'm doing this to get over the hump, to set the foundation. And once everything's in motion, it'll get better. And then you look up, and 5 years later, whatever your professional life is has grown, but you've painted yourself into this corner and life has been squeezed out, right? Everything else has been put on the back burner. So that's what this episode's about. It's about reversing that and making sure that you're having the life that you want to have while still enjoying the career success that you want to enjoy. So this seems like a pretty good time to talk about my personal journey here, right? So my first leg of my professional life, the better part of a decade, spent a couple years as an assistant college baseball coach, and then took over I guess the best way to put it is bad program. They don't give a great program's reins to just turned 23-year-old who had been a student assistant and then had no real head coaching experience. But the program was rough, right? The program was in bad shape. We had been an underfunded, unsuccessful NAIA level program. And they then decided they wanted to move to Division III. So we cut scholarships because they wanted to start football at the time. And so instead of having, a couple scholarships to divide up amongst the whole roster, we had none. And we're still competing for the next handful of years in the NAIA, where the maximum scholarship total was 12. So I took over this program that really nobody else wanted. We were probably the least well-funded program in our conference, top 5 or bottom 5% in the entire country. And it was an interesting stage of life for me because I was young, I was single, I could kind of pour myself into it. And that was an advantage, right? It was something where I could be creative and resourceful and go out and try things. Because in some ways, there was nothing to lose. We weren't very good to begin with. So I could experiment and be curious. And a lot of the things that we ended up doing 25 years ago have become common practice today. I mean, we're doing bat speed work 25 years ago. We were really aggressive in the weight room. We just took a completely different approach to developing and playing baseball, and it worked. And we became a nationally ranked program by year 3, finished 5th at the World Series, even though at that point they had reinstituted scholarships and we had 1.7 competing in a division where everybody else that was good had 12. Part of the success was I didn't really care about having a life outside of this. I didn't have to find balance. I didn't have to have this harmonious kind of career and life working together. And I recognized that not too long after I stopped coaching college baseball. I recognized that one of the advantages was I could just be totally tunnel vision. I could be consumed. And it was, that wasn't going to be sustainable if I would have continued down that path, but then had a family. So when I got into business, I was pretty self-aware with this and carved out family time each week and had a few non-negotiables, even though it was still very early on, bootstrap businesses all along the way. A lot of travel, a lot of making up for lack of resources with a whole lot of time and effort. And like most people, I rationalized that and said, okay, I'm doing this for the good of my family. I am building something that's going to be able to pay for kids' education, and I'm doing this stuff for the good of the group. But at some point, that goes from being that startup mentality and that hustle and grind to a lie we tell ourselves in order to just keep doing the things that we're doing. And I looked up and I'm like, man, I'm almost a decade into this. We've got 2 kids, one 10 or 11 years old, one 2 or 3 years old. I'm traveling quite a bit to do live events, to do franchise trainings. We're growing businesses left and right. We've got two award-winning franchises. Got another business that's Inc. 5000 multiple time recipient. We've got a big team. There's, 40 people on the team, and I am just go the entire time. And I remember vividly there were a couple moments, one of which was really the final straw for me. I'm out in our front yard, and my younger son, who is now 15, was 2 or 3 at the time, and I'm flipping him like wiffle balls. And, we obviously spent a lot of time doing baseball stuff. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about, like, hey, I've got to go create some marketing stuff. We've got payroll coming up, 3 payrolls in 1 month, and, I need to drive some revenue in. And I just stopped, and I'm like, this is a moment I should be fully present with my kid. This is a moment that I should be okay with turning that other stuff off. And if I can't, then I'm doing it wrong. And I mean, to make a really long story a little bit shorter, that was the moment that I was sure, is like, okay, I got to move on. I got to go a different direction here. And so started to unwind a network of businesses, a holding company with a lot of things that were a lot of different entities involved. And it gave me a lot of time to think about, okay, well, I built a success I don't particularly enjoy, and it's not congruent with having the life that I want. How can I build a success that actually allows me to live the life that I want? And I just arrived at the fact that a lot of the life planning stuff, you got to plan first. A lot of having this work together is you need to establish guardrails very early on. You need to say, okay, I'm going to be home during these times, or I'm going to be available to coach my kids in this sport, or to have dinner with my family on these days, or take these weekends off, or take long vacations. Because otherwise, any sort of ambition fueled career is going to squeeze all of that stuff out if you don't establish it. But I don't care if you're a training gym owner or a baseball coach. A lot of what we do, we pre-schedule, right? Professionally, there are sessions on the calendar, there are team meetings on the calendar, there are games and practices that have defined dates and starting points. Well, we know that works because we live and die by that professionally. Well, we can do the same thing personally. We can establish what we would consider largely non-negotiable time. I had a friend that I consulted with their company, some Precision Nutrition, the gentleman, John Berardi. They had a 9-figure exit, and I was fortunate enough to be able to consult towards the end before they were exiting the company. And John seemed to have had this all figured out. And he was like, hey, I've got these guardrails in place where I work 4 days a week, 7 hours a day. And to be fair, there were a couple instances that he would message me about work that were outside those 4 days a week, 7 hours a day. And I asked him, and it was like, yeah, it's like good nutrition. It's like, if you're 90% compliant and you know what your rules are, it's okay to cheat here and there, right? Like, it's okay to get off track, but you know what getting back on track looks like, and you know what living your life that way looks like. And so I would say that I don't care where you are in your career journey. Sure, if you are in year one of being a business owner, or you just took over a struggling program or something like that, you're probably going to have some temporary guardrails that may be a little bit more favorable towards the career stuff to get the flywheel turning. But if you are letting that continue on, you're going to look up one day and you're going to say, you know what? I missed out on a whole lot of stuff. I missed out on the ability to spend time with my children. I missed out on a lot of the best years in, my marriage. I'm going to look back and have some regrets. And I will tell you, being at a stage now in my early 50s, when I go back and have reunions with the guys that played for me, and when I see people that I've known for years, nobody talks about winning this game or this championship. Nobody talks about, hey, you remember when we had that great revenue month? It's all people stories. It's all relationships. And so if it's that way in business, and then you talk to people who are even further down the road, retired, their regrets are never, hey, I didn't work more Saturdays. Their regrets are never, I wish I would have spent more late nights in the office. Their regrets are, I let somebody else raise my kids growing up because I just wasn't present. Their regrets are not finding some rules that allowed me to have some balance in life. And I know balance is a dicey term because it implies everything's equal. So maybe harmony is better, or a rhythm between things. But I mean, if Kurt Signetti can win a national championship in Indiana that used to be a laughing stock in football forever, and his guys can get home for dinner with their family a couple of nights a week in a profession that's notorious for people burning the candle at both ends, I'm pretty sure you can too. I'm pretty sure that if you establish guardrails, if you prioritize things that are important, and that doesn't mean that everything is equal, everything's seasonal, right? Like I know for me, when my kids were younger and I was a whole lot more involved in just their lives as a playmate, somebody to go out and play catch with or whatever else, then those guardrails probably looked a little bit different than they do now, where one's an adult and one's a teenager that sees me as transportation as much as anything else. Then, I can evolve those guardrails, and you can too. But that stuff goes fast, and you'll see images online. I think there have been some wonderful ones shared on social media or in books where you'll say, now 90% or 90 plus percent of the time you spend with your kids is before their age of 18. Well, if you squander that, you're not getting it back in their 20s and in their 30s. So keep that in mind. And the best part about this, I think, is I think we all do great with constraints. So if you put these constraints on your career, it's not going to hamper your career, and it might actually help it, right? We all seem to be most productive the day before we're leaving for vacation. We all sell the most when we're in a final day for a closeout or a quota or something like that, right? We get more done when we have to prepare for that quote unquote final exam. So by putting some constraints in what you do, you inevitably make that time more productive. You make that time more valuable, and then you end up having that double win. You can thrive in your career and still have a life that you love.